Okay, have you seen them? I feel like they're everywhere lately. Like I can't go anywhere without seeing them.
Yeah, they're definitely having a moment.
Preserved plants, that's what we're talking about today. And trust me, there's a lot more to this trend than meets the eye.
Absolutely. It's not just about decor, it's about, well, I think it's a shift in how we think about bringing nature into our lives.
Exactly. Especially as we all get busier and, more aware of things like sustainability.
Yeah, for sure.
And to help us understand all of this, we have the insights of Annie Zhang, who has been in the flower industry for 20 years.
Wow, 20 years?
20 years. She understands global trends, and she's not just observing them, she works directly with the supply chain.
So we're getting like real insider knowledge here.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
All right, so let's dive in. I think a lot of people, and this includes me, like at first glance, I kind of lump them in with artificial plants.
Oh, yeah, because
Can we just like right off the bat debunk that?
right away. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Preserved plants are real. 100% real. They've just gone through a process that helps them keep their natural beauty for way longer.
So like what, they like freeze the plant in time?
Kind of, yeah. It's like capturing its peak vibrancy and just like holding it there.
Okay, so how do they do that? What's the science behind it?
Well, they basically replace the plant's sap with this glycerin solution. It's totally natural and it acts as a preservative, so it lets the plant hold on to its color, its flexibility, even some of the texture.
And for how long? Like how long are we talking?
Oh, months, sometimes even years.
Wow, that's amazing. So no like weird chemicals or formaldehyde or anything like that?
Nope, none of that. The process is like surprisingly eco-friendly, and honestly, I think that's a big part of why they're becoming so popular.
That makes a lot of sense. People are way more aware of the environmental impact of their choices these days.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's get to the part I'm most excited about, which is the care and maintenance. Or should I say the lack of care and maintenance?
Right, that's the best part. That's one of the biggest appeals. Like, you don't need to water them, no direct sunlight, no pests, no diseases. It's amazing.
So all those plant care tips I've been like religiously following,
Out the window?
they don't apply here?
Nope, pretty much. I mean, maybe dust them off every now and then. That's about it. It's a total game changer, especially if you're like me and you don't exactly have a green thumb.
Sold. All right, but what about variety? Are we talking like just a few basic plants or...
Oh no, there's tons of variety. I mean, that's what makes it so exciting. There are two main categories, preserved moss and preserved greens, and both have so many different textures and colors.
Ooh, moss. I can already picture like a big, lush green wall in my living room. Tell me everything.
Right. I know, moss walls are so cool. So you've got reindeer moss, which has an amazing texture, perfect for wall art or like, a centerpiece on your table. Then there's flat moss, which is what you'd use for those green walls you're picturing. And then pole moss, which has this cool rounded texture. You can do some really interesting things with that.
So many possibilities.
Yeah.
What about preserved greens? What kind of options are we talking about there?
Let's see, you've got eucalyptus, which has a beautiful look and that great scent. Ivy, always a classic. It adds a nice flowy look. Palm fronds can bring a tropical vibe, and ferns have that like rustic woodland feel.
Wow, it does seem like there's literally something for everyone. Okay, I'm curious. What kind of preserved plant would you put in your own space?
Oh, that's a tough one. Honestly, I love the idea of a green wall, maybe with like a mix of flat and coal moss. But then I also really love eucalyptus, and I've heard it can purify the air. Ugh, so many choices.
I know, right? It's going to be a tough decision. But I got to ask, are we just talking about homes here? Can you use them in other places?
Oh, totally. Offices, hotels, restaurants, events, literally anywhere you can think of.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Right.
Like a really chic office with a preserved green wall.
Exactly. It would totally transform the space. And for businesses, it's a really cool way to show that they care about sustainability.
Okay, speaking of sustainability, we talked about how eco-friendly the preservation process is,
Mhm.
but what about the logistics? Like they have to get transported and packaged without getting damaged. How does that all work?
That's a great question. And this is where Annie's knowledge of the supply chain really comes in. See, unlike fresh flowers, preserved plants don't need any special climate-controlled transport. They usually just get shipped in regular, dry cargo
So
containers.
no more like wilted deliveries or tons of packaging.
Exactly. Much more efficient, much better for the environment. And speaking of packaging, Sweetie Group is really committed to using eco-friendly materials.
Oh, that's great. Knowing where your decor comes from and how it's produced, that's something people really care about these days.
Absolutely. And Sweetie Group has been doing this for over 16 years, so they've really built a reputation for quality and innovation. They even offer custom solutions, which is something we'll talk more about later.
Okay, I'm already intrigued. Before we move on, let's just recap what we've learned so far because it's a lot. So preserved plants, real, not artificial. They're super low maintenance, they're good for the planet, and there are like a zillion different options. What's not to love?
Right. Honestly, it's pretty amazing. And I think this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore, especially when it comes to the business side of things and those custom solutions you mentioned.
Okay, I can't wait. But in the meantime, I think our listeners should start thinking about what kind of preserved plants they would like in their own spaces. A moss wall, a eucalyptus arrangement, the possibilities really are endless.
They really are.
Okay, welcome back. I am so ready to add some of this preserved plant magic to my life.
I know, me too.
But like before I go crazy and buy all the moss walls, I kind of want to understand how this industry works,
Mm.
like behind the scenes.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do they get from like a plant to a preserved plant? Right.
Right, exactly.
Well, this is where Annie Zhang's experience is so valuable. I mean, not only is she the CEO of Sweetie Group, but she's been in the flower industry for 2 decades, so she really knows her stuff.
20 years, that's a long time. So she's seen like all the trends come and go.
Oh, yeah, she's seen it all. And what I think is really cool is that she's not just observing those trends, she's actually working directly with the supply chain.
Wow. So she really understands what's happening at every level.
Yeah, from like the farm to the final product.
That's amazing. So
Um,
what was it about preserved plants specifically that caught her eye?
well, I think she saw that people really wanted to have nature in their homes and offices, but, not everyone has the time or the skills to keep plants alive.
Right. I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, me too. So she saw this gap in the market, and she realized that preserved plants could be the solution. They bring the beauty of nature indoors, but without all the hassle.
So it's like she anticipated a need before people even realized they had it.
Exactly. And because she already had all this knowledge of the flower industry, she was in a perfect position to make it happen.
That's brilliant. Okay, so let's talk about Sweetie Group itself. What makes them different from other companies doing preserved plants?
Well, we've talked about their commitment to sustainability, and obviously their experience is huge, but one thing that really stood out to me was their focus on quality. They actually have their own factories in China, in Yunnan, Yiwu, and Henan, so they have a lot of control over the entire process.
Oh, okay, so they're not just sourcing from random places. They're actually making sure that the plants are high quality from the start.
Yeah, exactly. They have these really strict standards that they adhere to throughout the entire production process.
That's great. Okay, so how does the preservation process actually work? Is it the same for every type of plant?
That's a good question. The basic idea is the same, like replacing the sap with glycerin, but the actual techniques vary depending on the plant. Like, delicate flowers need a much gentler touch than, say, a palm frond.
Makes sense. So it's kind of like an art as much as a science, right?
Yeah, definitely. It takes a lot of skill and expertise.
Speaking of art, we keep mentioning Sweetie Group's custom solutions. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means?
Sure. So imagine like a company wants to incorporate their logo into a living wall, but they want to use preserved moss instead of live plants. Or like picture a hotel lobby with this amazing chandelier made entirely of preserved flowers and foliage. It's pretty incredible what they can do.
Wow, that sounds really cool. But I got to ask, is that kind of custom work? Is it super expensive?
I mean, it can be an investment for sure, but they also offer a lot of pre-designed products that are more affordable. So you can get things like, table arrangements, wall art, even ready-made green wall panels.
So you don't have to be like a millionaire to have some preserved plants in your life.
Exactly. And think about it, you're actually saving money in the long run because you don't have to water them, fertilize them, replace them when they die.
True, true.
Okay.
Okay, so going back to Annie Zhang for a minute, she's obviously a visionary in this industry. Where does she see preserved plants going in the future? Like, is this just a trend, or does she think it's something bigger?
She's definitely not seeing this as just a trend. She really believes that preserved plants are here to stay, and she thinks they're going to become even more integrated into our lives and spaces, like not just as decorations, but as part of, sustainable design and architecture.
Wow, that'd be amazing. I
Mm.
can totally see that happening. As people become more aware of the benefits, I think the demand is just going to keep growing.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's not just about demand, it's also about a shift in our values. Like we're starting to move away from this disposable culture and towards a more circular approach,
Mhm.
thinking about things that are long lasting and have a minimal impact on the environment.
I love that. And preserved plants definitely fit into that. Okay, so are there any trends within the world of preserved plants that Annie is particularly excited about?
Well, she's really interested in this whole concept of biophilic design, which is all about incorporating natural elements into our built environments to improve well-being and productivity. And preserved plants are perfect for that because they're so low maintenance and they last so long.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like bringing the outdoors in, even in places where it's not really possible to have live plants.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just the visual appeal. There are actual studies that show that being around nature, even just seeing it or feeling it, can reduce stress, improve focus, and even boost creativity.
That's incredible. So are there any other companies besides Sweetie Group that are doing really innovative things with preserved plants?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many companies all over the world that are experimenting with new techniques, new materials, new designs. It's a really exciting time to be following this industry.
Wow, it sounds like there's a whole world of preserved plant magic out
Mhm.
there just waiting to be explored.
There really is. And, it's not just about the plants themselves, it's about what they represent. This shift in how we think about design and our relationship with nature.
That's a really good point. It's like they're a symbol of something bigger, something more sustainable and more connected to the natural world.
Exactly.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We have been talking all about preserved plants. And wow, I've learned so much. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's been a fun deep dive for sure.
So we've talked about how they're made, the different varieties, the sustainability aspect,
Mhm.
but I think there's like a bigger conversation to be had here.
Totally. We've
All right.
only scratched the surface.
Exactly. So, I mean, we've hinted at it throughout the episode, but preserved plants, they're not just a pretty decoration, right? They could actually play a role in a more sustainable future for, like design and architecture.
Absolutely. It's not just about how they look, it's about making choices that align with our values.
And I think people really are looking for ways to bring nature into their lives in a way that feels, good, responsible.
Definitely. And it all comes back to that idea of biophilic design. Remember, we talked about that.
Ah,
Bringing nature into our buildings and spaces to improve well being.
yeah, I love that concept. I've always been drawn to places that feel connected to nature, like a room with lots of sunlight or a building with plants growing on the roof. It just makes you feel better.
Right. There's something so calming and restorative about it. But the thing is, live plants aren't always practical. You need the right light, you got to water them, there's maintenance.
Yeah, that's true. It's a whole thing.
Exactly. But with preserved plants, you don't have those limitations. You can literally bring nature into any space.
Oh, so like even in a dimly lit office or like what about a hospital?
Yeah, totally. And it's not just about the look. There's research that shows being around nature can actually reduce stress, help you focus, even boost creativity.
Wow, that's amazing. So preserved plants, they're like a way to bring those benefits into places where it wouldn't normally be possible.
Exactly. It's like blurring the lines between indoors and outdoors, creating these spaces that are good for us and good for the planet.
All right, so what are some specific examples of how this is being done, like in the real world?
Okay, so picture this. You walk into a busy office, and there's this huge wall covered in preserved moss. It's not just visually stunning, it also absorbs sound.
Oh, so it makes the space quieter and calmer?
Exactly. It's like bringing a little piece of the forest indoors.
I love it. Any other cool examples?
Well, there's a lot of interest in using preserved plants in hospitals. Think about it, a waiting room with a calming green wall or patient rooms with some pretty flower arrangements. It just creates a more peaceful and healing environment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so big picture. What do you think the future holds for preserved plants? Are they going to become even more popular?
I think so, absolutely. We're just starting to see what's possible. And as technology gets better, who knows what we'll be able to do? I mean, imagine preserving all kinds of plants that we can't even imagine right now.
That's so cool. And as sustainability becomes more and more important, I think people are really going to be drawn to options like this, right?
For sure. It's not just about what people want, it's also about a change in how we think. We're moving away from disposable stuff and thinking more about things that last, things that are made responsibly.
Yeah, that's a really important shift. And I think preserved plants really embody that. They're beautiful, they're practical, and they're eco-friendly.
They really are, and that's what makes this whole topic so exciting. It's not just about a plant, it's about changing the way we design our world and how we connect with nature.
Well said. So to our listeners, if you're feeling inspired and want to learn more, Annie Zhang and Sweetie Group are a great place to start. They're not only making beautiful things, they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible with preserved plants. You can find them at sales@sweetie-group.com.
It's been so much fun talking about this with you, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed it too. It's amazing how something as simple as a preserved plant can lead to such a fascinating conversation.
I know, right? It just goes to show there's always something new to learn, always new connections to make. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, and we'll see you next time.